Just a little warning before we start, this video obviously contains references to sex toys and general sexy shenanigans, so a few naughty words are used. If that's not your thing, you may want to scarper now, but I assume you expected this as you clicked on this video. We know that people have been using sex toys for thousands of years. The oldest, highly polished dildo was found in Ulm, Germany in 2005. Used by prehistoric cave dwellers, it was made from palaeolithic stone around 28,000 BC. But what about sex toys and the medievals? We all know that they would never have used them because they were some of the most sexually repressed people in history, right? Wrong. The medievals could actually be quite imaginative when it came to sexy time, despite the church doing its best to condemn any form of sexual gratification. Let's travel back in time to the Middle Ages to discover manuals on unnatural vices, shoe fetishes, and red leather strap-ons. Oh, and Happy New Year! Welcome to Medieval Madness. It's a sin. Penitentials were books of church rules written by clerics. First developed in the 6th century, they set out instructions concerning a Christian sacrament of penance, a new manner of reconciliation with God. They contain a list of sins and the suitable penances recommended for them. Burchard of Worms was the bishop of the imperial city of Worms in the Holy Roman Empire, now Germany. At the end of the 10th and beginning of the 11th century, he wrote a collection of 20 canon law books, a sort of manual on sins and the penance required for committing them. No fewer than 194 sex-related questions were contained within the pages. In the volume covering the sin of fornication, Burchard first described sodomy as sex between two men, quote, as the sodomites did. By the later Middle Ages, the term sodomy not only referred to homosexuality, but included a much wider scope of, quote, deviant activity. Thomas Aquinas believed there were 4 activities classed as sins against nature. Along with homosexuality, he now also included bestiality, masturbation, and sex between heterosexual couples in a non-missionary position as an injury to God. As time went on, the term sodomy became even more vague. In fact, it came to include taking part in any sexual activity other than a heterosexual married couple in the missionary position, as sex was all about procreation, nothing else. Writers were deliberately vague because talking about specific sexual deviancy might give people ideas. They didn't want to be giving their flock instructions on how to sin. Theodulf of Orleans wrote, quote, when he goes away, he be persuaded by the devil to fall into one of the crimes of which he had previously been ignorant. Many even believe that deviant behavior could be passed on from one person to another, like some sort of virulent disease. It is quite rare to find any medieval writings on the subject of lesbianism. The first reference to it can be found in Theodore's Penitential at the end of the 7th century. He wrote, quote, if a woman practices vice with a woman, she shall do penance for 3 years. The 8th century penitentials of Bede mention nuns who took part in homosexual relationships and used a phallic device of some sort during sexual activity, writing, quote, if nuns with a nun using an instrument, 7 years penance. Sexual relationships could and did form in communities of nuns. St. Augustine warned them against sharing carnal love and recommended that they only bathe communally once a month in the presence of no less than 3 other women. Lesbianism, like any other, quote, sin against nature, was deplored by the church. In the 9th century, the Frankish writer Archbishop Heinmar of Reims wrote about lesbians who use sex toys. He ordered, quote, do not put flesh to flesh in the sense of the genital organ of the other, since nature precludes this, but they do transform the use of the member in question into an unnatural one, in that they are reported to use certain instruments of diabolical operation to excite desires. To the church, the act was lust-driven and pointless because there was no chance of procreation. Just for a woman to masturbate was seen as the most horrible sin. Burchard continued his tirade on the sins of lesbian women and their strap-on dildos, asking the question, quote, Have you done what certain women are wont to do, contriving a certain engine or mechanical device in the form of the male sexual organ, the dimensions being calculated to give you pleasure, and binding it to your own or another woman's pudenda, and have you thus committed fornication with other evilly disposed women, or they, using the same or some other apparatus, with yourself? In other words, have you made a strap-on and then used it on other women or used it on yourself? Then you must be punished for 3 years and only take bread and water on fast days. Sour grapes. In 1295, a woman named Bertolina of Bologna, Italy, was put on trial at the Bolognese civic court. She was accused of being a sodomite. The court notification read, quote, Bertolina, who is called Gertia, daughter of the late Francesco of the parish of St. Cecilia, is and long has been, especially for the last 6 months, a public and well-known sodomite, using a certain mancipium with 2 silk testicles, conducting herself lustfully with women with this mancipium, as men do with women. This is unutterable and horrible, in opprobrium of God and the world, and against human nature. She does this in the narrow area by the old city walls, which is next to the town ditch in the parish of San Vital. The mancipium was obviously some sort of sexual instrument, as the word is mentioned in another Bolognese case from around the same time. This must have been a sophisticated type of dildo with 2 testicles made from silk attached to it. Bertolina's accuser, a man named Guglielmo, who had remained anonymous at first, came forward to testify in court. He was a neighbor, and he brought 2 witnesses to the court to testify against Bertolina. One of these witnesses was a man named Ugolino Martini. He testified that he had heard some men serenading a woman and asked for their services to sing to his sweetheart. They explained that Bertolina employed them and that they could only work for him with her permission. She gave it, and the group went down to see his lady. As the singers began their work at Lady Dolzerbone's house, Bertolina explained to Ugolino that she had been interested in his sweetheart for 2 years. Ugolino replied, quote, Unlucky you, how can you be interested in women? At which Bertolina produced her silk virilia or dildo and explained that she used it during sex. Ugolino admitted that he never actually saw her use it for those purposes, only that she said she did. As well as the accusation of sodomy, Bertolina was accused of fortune-telling and casting love magic. These were common charges often leveled at prostitutes. It was said that she is a public and well-known magician and diviner, deceiving the men and women of the city of Bologna, extorting money from them, saying that she was able to make people greatly and entirely love her, and make others hate in the manner of a magician and idolater. 4 more of Bertolina's neighbors who were questioned in court said they knew nothing of the suspect or her supposed crimes. When she was summoned to testify, it was found that Bertolina had absconded. She did not attend court within the required time, so she was exiled from Bologna unless she paid a fine. It would seem that the court didn't consider the matter of any real concern, and the fine for a woman was far more lenient than the usual penalty for any man convicted of sodomy, which was execution by burning. Batteries not included. In 1477, Katharina Hetzeldorfer of Speyer, Germany, found herself in court in Nuremberg. She had moved there with a woman who she claimed was her sister. The 2 lived together for 2 years before the arrest.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
After she was cross-examined, Katharina admitted that the woman was not her sibling, but rather the 2 were lovers in a long-standing sexual relationship. It is possible that her partner escaped, as she is not mentioned as being present in court. One female witness who came forward described Katharina as, quote, being like a man in both physique and behavior, a sexually aggressive character, and a potent lover. It was said that Katharina sought out women as sexual partners to bend to her manly will. She visited their homes, and after such roguery, she jumped out of the window to avoid capture. Along with other witnesses, Katharina was made to describe how she acted like a man and used, quote, an instrument with a piece of red leather at the front filled with cotton, and a wooden stick stuck into it, and made a hole through the wooden stick, put a string through, and tied it round. As lifelike as this appendage was, it was noted that it could not lie flaccid when not in use, or be used for urination. Things don't seem quite so amusing when we learn that Katharina, who acted just like a man, was executed for her crime, which was never given a name in court. She was drowned in the Rhine River in what is one of the earliest records of a woman being executed for her, quote, sin against nature. If the shoe fits. The poulain was a style of unisex footwear that became popular in Europe at various times in the Middle Ages. It was also known as a krakow as it originated in Poland in the middle of the 14th century, and has been described as perhaps, quote, the most blatantly sexual and pornographic shoe style ever worn. Made from soft material, the shoe or boot comprised an extremely long pointed toe and has to be stuffed full of moss or wool to keep the tip erect, as over time the toe was made longer and longer. Starting at a modest 2 inches in the early days and ending at a whopping 14 inches, some had a little chain on the toe attaching them from the tip to the knee to stop themselves from tripping over. Pope Urban V hated the fashion, calling it, quote, an exaggeration against good manners, a scoffing against God and Church, a worldly vanity, and a mad presumption. He might have gone even further had he known what many poulains were being used for. Young men were quick to take advantage of the phallic potential of the poulain and had the tip coloured and fashioned to resemble an erect penis. Some added tiny bells to the tip, called folly bells, that tinkled and brought attention to the wearer being open to a little sexual fun and games. Bells were later added to codpieces for the same reason. Poulain wearers used their toys at court and in affluent homes to play footsie under the table. A man's erect poulain would lift the hem of a woman's dress and slide up between her legs for as high as she would allow. Female diners might find that 1 or 2 orgasms were served up along with the soup and fish courses. Some women used the poulain for masturbation, finding the experience more pleasurable if they knew that the poulain belonged to their paramour. When a husband or lover was unable to achieve an erection, it was common for their wife or mistress to comment, quote, your poulain is more man than you. Although using shoes as sex toys may sound implausible today, we can turn to the Encyclopedia of Pleasure for the final word. It was written in the 10th century by the medieval Arab writer Ali ibn Nasr al-Khatib. He advised men, quote, if she instead is slow in coming, he can carve a wooden sandal in the shape of a penis, and either arouse her with this or his fingers before intercourse. Well, this puts a whole new perspective on the phrase shoehorn. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Medieval Madness. Happy New Year to everyone, and please do subscribe if you're enjoying these videos. Hope everyone's having an awesome start to 2025, and I'll see you next week for another video. Until then, go careful with the poulains. Cheers!